Professor Jake Sullivan stood at the front of his classroom on the 15th floor of Galactic University. The morning sun from 3 different stars shone through the large windows, casting colorful light across the room. Jake was a tall man, with brown hair and kind eyes. He wore a simple blue shirt and dark pants, looking more like a farmer than a university professor. The classroom was full of alien students from many different worlds. There were 23 students in total, and each one looked completely different from the others. Near the front sat a small creature called Pip. She looked like a rabbit, but had purple fur and ears that were twice as long as her head. Her big black eyes watched Jake carefully as he spoke. Pip was from a peaceful planet called Villani Prime, where the biggest danger was getting caught in the rain. Behind Pip sat 3 Zephyrian students. They looked like walking crystals that sparkled in the light. When they moved, they made soft musical sounds like tiny bells. These beings were made of living crystal and came from a world of endless caves and mineral formations. They had never seen a real predator in their entire lives. In the back corner, a group of Thoraxian students clicked their mandibles together as they took notes. They looked like giant ants, but walked on 2 legs and wore clothing. Their home world was covered in massive underground cities, where everything was safe and organized. Jake loved teaching these students. Each species brought their own way of thinking about biology and life. On Earth, Jake had grown up on a cattle ranch in Montana. His father had taught him about animals from the time he could walk. Now, 35 years later, he was teaching alien students about creatures from across the galaxy. Today's lesson was about predator and prey relationships. Jake touched a button on his desk, and a holographic image appeared in the air above him. The image showed a forest scene from the planet Kythera. Tall purple trees swayed in the wind, and strange blue grass covered the ground. As you can see, Jake said in his calm voice, predator-prey relationships vary significantly across different planetary environments. The key factor is always the balance between hunter and hunted. On Kythera, the ecosystem has evolved over millions of years to create perfect harmony between. Jake never finished his sentence. A sound like thunder filled the room as the reinforced wall behind Jake exploded inward. Chunks of metal and concrete flew across the classroom. Students screamed and dove for cover as dust and debris filled the air. The holographic display flickered and died as power cables were torn from the wall. Through the massive hole in the wall stepped a creature from everyone's worst nightmares. The Kythran stalker was 8 feet tall and moved on 6 powerful legs. Its body was covered in black armor that looked like polished stone. The creature's head was triangular, with 6 red eyes arranged in 2 rows. Its mouth opened to reveal teeth as long as kitchen knives. But the most terrifying thing about the stalker was the bright orange patches along its spine. These bioluminescent spots pulsed with warning light, telling every living thing nearby that death was coming. Every species in the galaxy knew this signal. Orange light from a stalker meant you had seconds to live. The alien students reacted exactly as their instincts told them to. Pip squeaked like a terrified mouse and threw herself under her desk, her long ears folded flat against her head. The Zephyrian students began vibrating so fast, they sounded like an orchestra of wind chimes. Their crystal bodies flashed with panic signals. The Thoraxian students in the back activated their emergency pheromone glands, filling their corner of the room with the chemical smell of terror. 2 of them fainted on the spot. The remaining students of various species all did the same thing. They ran toward the exits, pushing and shoving in their desperation to escape. The classroom became chaos. Desks were overturned as students climbed. Over them, books and tablets scattered across the floor. Someone was crying. Someone else was praying in a language that sounded like musical whistles. But in all this panic, one person remained completely still. Jake Sullivan stood exactly where he had been when the wall exploded. His feet were planted firmly on the ground, his shoulders square. He watched the massive predator with the calm attention of a man studying an interesting bird outside his window. There was no fear in his eyes, no trembling in his hands. The stalker swiveled its triangular head, scanning the room with its 6 eyes. It could smell the terror from the alien students. It could hear their rapid heartbeats and panicked breathing. These were the signals that triggered its hunting instincts. The creature's gaze settled on Pip, still hiding under her desk near the front of the room. She was small, frightened, and alone. Perfect prey. The stalker's secondary arms unfolded from its sides, revealing claws that could cut through steel. Its orange warning lights pulsed brighter as it prepared to strike. This was exactly the moment when Jake Sullivan stepped directly between the 8-foot killing machine and his terrified student. The moment Jake stepped between the stalker and Pip, the security alarms began to scream throughout the building. The sound was so loud that it hurt everyone's ears. Red lights flashed on and off in the hallway outside the broken classroom. The alarm system had detected the breach in the wall and was warning everyone in the university that danger was present. The stalker's 6 red eyes focused on the small purple creature cowering under the desk. Pip was shaking so hard that her long ears were flapping against the floor. She had pulled her knees up to her chest and was trying to make herself as small as possible. Her species had evolved on a world with no predators, so her body had no idea how to handle this situation. Except to hide and hope, Jake could see the exact moment when the stalker's hunting instincts took over. The creature's posture changed from cautious exploration to focused attack mode. Its secondary arms, which had been folded against its sides, slowly extended outward, like a spider preparing to grab its prey. At the end of each arm were claws that looked like curved daggers. These claws were made of the same material as the creature's armor and could cut through the metal walls of spaceships. The stalker took one step toward Pip's hiding place, then another. Its 6 legs moved with perfect silence despite its massive size. This was how it hunted on its home world. Slow, careful, and absolutely deadly. Jake knew he had maybe 3 seconds before the creature would reach his student. In those 3 seconds, he made a decision that went against everything he had been taught about alien predators. Instead of running away like every survival manual said to do, Jake stepped directly into the stalker's path. The creature was now only 6 feet away from him. Jake could see his own reflection in its red eyes. He could smell its breath, which reminded him of hot metal and sulfur. The orange patches on its back were pulsing so brightly that they lit up the dusty air around the creature. "Hey there," Jake said in the same quiet voice he used to calm spooked horses back home on the ranch. His words were barely louder than a whisper, but in the chaos of the moment, they seemed to cut through all the noise. Jake slowly raised both of his arms above his head, making himself look bigger and more threatening. This was something his grandfather had taught him when he was 8 years old, and they encountered a black bear near their camping site. "Make yourself big," the old man had said. "Show them you're not afraid, and most predators will think twice about messing with you." The stalker's triangular head snapped toward Jake so fast that it made a small whooshing sound through the air. All 6 of its eyes focused on this strange new creature that had appeared in its hunting zone. The stalker had hunted thousands of prey animals in its lifetime, but it had never encountered anything that behaved like this human. Where was the fear? Where was the panic that made prey animals run in circles and scream? Where was the desperate flight response that triggered the stalker's killer instinct? Every creature the stalker had ever hunted had the same reaction when they saw it. They either ran away as fast as possible, or they froze in place and waited to die. But this human was doing neither. Jake stood perfectly still, but it was not the stillness of fear. It was the stillness of someone who was thinking, planning, staying calm under pressure. His breathing was slow and steady. His heart rate had actually gone down instead of up. His muscles were relaxed, but ready to move if needed. Jake looked directly into the stalker's 6 eyes, without blinking or looking away. For any other species in the galaxy, this would have been suicide. Direct eye contact with a Kithran stalker was seen as a challenge, and challenges always ended with the challenger being torn apart. But Jake had grown up on a cattle ranch in Montana, where looking away from an angry bull meant getting trampled into the ground. His father had taught him that when dealing with dangerous animals, you never show fear, and you never back down first. They can smell fear, his father had said, but they respect strength. The stalker tilted its head to one side, then to the other, like a confused dog, trying to understand a strange sound. The bright orange warning patches along its spine began to flicker like broken lights. They would pulse bright orange for a second, then fade to a dim yellow, then back to orange. Again, this was not following any behavioral pattern the creature understood. In its simple mind, there were only two types of living things, predators and prey. Predators were bigger and more dangerous than the stalker, so it avoided them. Prey were smaller and weaker, so it hunted them. But what was this human? It was much smaller than the stalker, but it showed no fear. It was standing in a threatening position, but it had no claws or fangs. It was looking directly at the stalker without backing down, but it was not attacking, for the first time in its life. The great Kithran stalker was confused. Jake began to move with careful, deliberate steps. Each movement was slow and controlled, like a dancer performing a routine he had practiced 1,000 times. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, never taking his eyes off the massive predator in front of him. His goal was simple: keep himself between the stalker and every single one of his students. The alien students who were still in the classroom pressed themselves against the far wall, unable to believe what they were seeing. Just yesterday, Professor Sullivan had been standing at this same spot, calmly explaining how Andromedon moss creatures found their mates by releasing sweet-smelling chemicals into the air. He had seemed like the gentlest person in the universe, someone who got excited about plant biology and spoke softly so he would not scare anyone. But now, something had changed in the human professor. His shoulders were broader somehow. His stance was different. The way he held his head and the look in his eyes made him seem like a completely different person. The students could feel a strange energy coming from him, something wild and dangerous that they had never noticed before. Pip was still hiding under her desk, but she could see Jake's legs as he moved. Even though she was terrified, she felt safer knowing he was there. She had never seen anyone stand up to a predator before. On her home world, when the rare, dangerous animal appeared, everyone simply ran away and hid until it left. The stalker decided to try a new approach. If it could not reach the small purple prey directly, it would circle around this strange obstacle and attack from a different angle. The creature began to move sideways, its 6 legs carrying it in a wide arc around Jake. This was a hunting technique that had worked for millions of years on its home planet. But Jake was ready for this move. As soon as the stalker stepped to the left, Jake stepped to the left as well. When the creature moved right, Jake moved right. Step for step, the human professor matched every movement the predator made. It was like watching two dancers who knew the same routine perfectly. The stalker had never experienced anything like this before. Usually, when it began to circle its prey, the victim would panic and run in the wrong direction, or freeze in place and wait to be caught. But this human was doing something completely unexpected. He was using the stalker's own hunting pattern against it. Jake's movements were not random or panicked. They were precise and controlled, like someone who understood exactly what the stalker was trying to do. Every time the creature tried to get around him, Jake was already there, blocking its path to the students. "That's right," Jake murmured, his voice so quiet that only the stalker could hear him. His breathing was deep and steady, the way it had been when he used to calm frightened cattle during thunderstorms back home. "You're not sure what I am, are you?" The predator paused in its circling movement, its triangular head tilted to one side, then to the other. In its simple mind, it was trying to process what was happening. This creature was too small to be a threat, but it was behaving like a dominant predator. It was not showing any of the fear signals that usually made hunting so easy. Behind Jake, hidden in the corner near the emergency exit, Amy Thornton was crouched behind an overturned desk. Amy was a graduate student from Earth, 26 years old, with red hair and freckles. She had been studying alien biology for 3 years, but she had never seen anything like this. Her hands were shaking as she whispered into her emergency communicator. "Security, this is Xenobiology Lab 7, she said, her voice barely controlled. "Professor Sullivan is. He's actually facing down a stalker. No, I'm not joking. He's standing right in front of it, and it's not attacking him. I don't understand what's happening, but you need to get here now." The voice on the other end of the communicator sounded confused and worried. "Did you say he's facing down a stalker? That's impossible. No one can survive a direct confrontation with one of those things. Are you sure it's a real stalker?" Amy looked at the massive black creature with its glowing orange patches and razor-sharp claws. "Trust me, it's real. And Professor Sullivan is just standing there like it's a farm animal or something." The stalker's secondary arms, which had been extended and ready to strike, began to flex uncertainly. The claws at the end of each arm were still fully extended, looking like curved swords made of black metal, but instead of attacking the creature, took a step backward. This movement sent a wave of shock through every alien student in the room. Kithran stalkers did not retreat. They did not back down. They were apex predators that had never met anything they could not kill and eat. But Jake's complete lack of fear was doing something strange to the creature's primitive brain. Deep in its mind, something was saying that maybe this small human was not prey after all. Maybe it was something else, something dangerous that should be avoided rather than hunted. The standoff between Jake and the massive stalker continued as the minutes ticked by. To the alien students watching from their hiding places, it felt like hours had passed. Every second seemed to stretch on forever as they waited to see what would happen next. The only sounds in the room were the distant wailing of security alarms and the quiet breathing of the human. Professor Jake could see the confusion growing in the stalker's 6 red eyes. Each eye was the size of a tennis ball, and they all focused on him with an intensity that would have terrified any other living creature. But Jake had spent his childhood staring down angry bulls and stubborn horses, so he knew how to read the body language of a confused animal. Every species in the known galaxy had the same basic response to danger. When they were scared, their hearts would beat faster, pumping blood through their bodies to prepare for running away. They would release chemicals called stress pheromones that other creatures could smell, marking them as afraid and vulnerable. Their muscles would tense up, ready to either fight or flee at a moment's notice. But Jake's body was doing none of these things. His heart was beating at its normal, steady pace, about 60 beats per minute, the same as when he was sitting at home, reading a book. He was not releasing any fear chemicals because he was not actually afraid. His muscles were relaxed but alert, like a cat resting in the sun but ready to move if something interesting happened. This was completely breaking the stalker's understanding of how the world worked. In its mind, there were predators and there was prey. Predators were dangerous, so you avoided them. Prey was food, so you caught it and ate it. But what was this human? He was small enough to be prey, but he acted like a predator. He was calm when he should be panicked. He was standing his ground when he should be running away. The confusion was making the stalker's hunting instincts short-circuit, like a broken computer. It had been born knowing how to hunt, just like birds are born knowing how to fly. But now, for the first time in its life, those instincts were giving it contradictory information. Then Jake did something that no xenobiology textbook had ever recorded, something that would be discussed in universities across the galaxy for the next 50 years. He slowly, carefully, began to extend his right hand toward the massive predator. His movement was so gradual that it was almost impossible to see. Inch by inch, his hand moved through the air toward the stalker's head. His palm was open and relaxed, fingers slightly curved in a non-threatening position. It was the same gesture he had used thousands of times with nervous animals back on the ranch. "Easy, girl," Jake said in the softest voice he could manage. His words were barely louder than a whisper, but they seemed to fill the entire room. He spoke the way he used to talk to spooked horses when they were afraid of thunderstorms. "Nobody's going to hurt you. You're just scared and confused, aren't you?" The alien students could not believe what they were seeing. Pip, still hiding under her desk, peeked out through her long purple ears to watch. The Zephyrian crystal beings had stopped their musical vibrating and were completely silent. Even Amy, the human graduate student, stopped whispering into her communicator and just stared. As Jake's hand moved closer, something amazing began to happen to the stalker. The bright orange patches along its spine, which had been pulsing with aggressive warning light, started to change color. The angry orange began to fade, becoming dimmer and dimmer. Then, slowly, the patches began to glow with a completely different color, a soft blue-green that none of the students had ever seen before. Jake kept his hand extended in the air, not quite touching the creature yet. He was letting the stalker make the choice about what happened next. This was something his grandfather had taught him when he was very young. "Never force an animal to trust you," the old man had said. "Let them decide for themselves. They'll know when they're ready." The stalker's massive head moved slightly, tilting to get a better look at Jake's outstretched hand. Its 6 eyes studied the human's palm, trying to understand what this gesture meant. On its home planet, no creature had ever extended a limb toward a stalker, except to try to fight it. The alien students held their breath as they watched this impossible scene unfold. Some of them were recording it on their devices, knowing that no one would believe them without proof. Others were too shocked to do anything but stare. After what felt like an eternity, the stalker made its decision. The massive creature slowly lowered its triangular head until it was level with Jake's extended hand. Then, moving as carefully as Jake had, it stretched its neck forward and sniffed his palm. Jake felt the creature's breath on his skin, warm and metallic, but not unpleasant. The stalker's hunting posture began to relax as Jake's calm presence somehow overrode millions of years of predatory programming. "There we go," Jake whispered, finally allowing his fingers to make gentle contact with the stalker's armored head. The creature's eyes focused on him with something that looked almost like curiosity instead of hunger. The sound of heavy boots running down the hallway grew louder as the university's security team rushed toward the damaged classroom. There were 8 security officers, all armed with pulse weapons that could stop a charging Thoraxian war beast. They had received Amy's emergency call and were prepared for the worst possible scenario: a loose Kitharan stalker killing students. Captain Torres, the head of security, was the first to reach the broken doorway. He raised his weapon and prepared to fire, expecting to see carnage and terror. Instead, he saw something that made him stop so suddenly that the officer behind him ran into his back. Professor Jake Sullivan was walking slowly across the classroom, one hand gently resting on the stalker's armored head. The massive predator was following him like a well-trained dog, its 6 legs moving in perfect coordination. The creature's orange warning patches had completely faded to a calm, blue-green color that made it look almost peaceful. Jake was speaking to the stalker in the same quiet voice he had used throughout the entire encounter. "Come on, girl. Time to go home. I bet you're hungry and tired after all this excitement." The stalker made a low rumbling sound that almost seemed like agreement. "Stand down," Jake called to the security team without looking away from the creature. "She's heading home now. Just got spooked when the containment field failed in the lab next door. Happens to the best of us when we get scared." Captain Torres lowered his weapon, but kept it ready, just in case. He had been working security at the university for 15 years and had seen many dangerous situations, but nothing like this. Professor Sullivan, are you saying that creature is not a threat? Jake chuckled as he guided the stalker toward the hole in the wall. Oh, she's definitely dangerous. But she's not hunting right now. She's just a scared animal who wants to get back to somewhere safe and familiar. The stalker paused at the edge of the hole and turned to look at Jake one more time. Its 6 eyes focused on his face, and for a moment there seemed to be some kind of understanding between them. Then the creature carefully climbed through the opening and disappeared back into the damaged laboratory where it had escaped from. As soon as the stalker was gone, the alien students began to emerge from their hiding places. They moved slowly and carefully, as if they were afraid the predator might come back at any moment. Their eyes were all fixed on Jake, staring at him like he was some kind of supernatural being. Pip was the first to approach him. The small purple creature's long ears were still shaking, and her big black eyes were wide with amazement. She walked up to Jake on trembling legs and looked up at his face. "Professor Sullivan," she squeaked in her tiny voice. "How did you? What did you... ... I don't understand how you did that." Jake straightened his shirt and looked around at the debris-filled classroom. Broken desks and scattered papers covered the floor. The holographic projector was sparking and smoking. One of the windows had a crack running through it from the impact of the wall explosion. "Well, Pip," Jake said, with a gentle smile, "that's what happens when you grow up on a death world. Back on Earth, we deal with grizzly bears, rattlesnakes, and mountain lions as part of daily life. My grandfather taught me that a scared predator is a scared predator, no matter what planet it's from or how many legs it has." Amy Thornton, the human graduate student, came out from behind her overturned desk. Her red hair was messy, and her hands were still shaking. "Jake, that was incredible. I've never seen anything like that in my life." More students gathered around Jake, all talking at once in their different languages. The Zephyrian crystal beings were chiming with excitement. The Thoraxian ant-like creatures were clicking their mandibles rapidly. Everyone wanted to know how a simple biology professor had just done something that every expert said was impossible. "The secret," Jake explained as he picked up his fallen coffee mug from the floor, "is understanding that most aggressive behavior comes from fear. That stalker wasn't hunting. She was lost and scared and reacting the only way she knew how. Once I showed her that I wasn't afraid and wasn't a threat, her whole attitude changed." Within hours, the story had spread throughout the entire university. Students from every department were talking about the human professor who had faced down a Kithran stalker with nothing but calm confidence. The video recordings that some students had made were shared across the galactic internet, making Jake famous on hundreds of different worlds. By the next semester, enrollment in Jake's xenobiology classes had tripled. Students traveled from across the galaxy just to learn from the man they were calling the Stalker Whisperer. Jake found this attention embarrassing, but he enjoyed having more students who were genuinely interested in learning about alien life forms. For the alien students who had witnessed the encounter, it was their first real understanding of why Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. They had read about Earth's dangerous animals and harsh environment, but seeing Jake's response to danger helped them understand why humans were respected and sometimes feared throughout the galaxy. The next day, Jake resumed his lecture in a hastily repaired classroom. He stood in exactly the same spot where he had faced the stalker and smiled at his students. "As I was saying yesterday before we were interrupted," he began in his calm voice, "predator-prey relationships vary significantly across different planetary environments.